Sripada Sharanam Prapadhye. Chapter 34. The Story of Sarabheswara. Sri Dharmagupta and I travelled for some days and reached another village. Sri Dharmagupta and I were reciting the name of Sripada and recollecting his boundless mercy and compassion while carrying on with our journey. Someone or the other was giving us hospitality on the way. We continued the journey in some places on a cart drawn by two bullocks. In some places, we travelled on a horse drawn carriage. In some other places, we simply travelled on foot. We considered it as a sportive grace of Sripada Srivallabha, who was indirectly looking after us in whatever way we travelled or in what manner we received the hospitality from someone or the other. There was a special incident in one village when we reached there. All the articles in the house of a Brahmin in that village were being thrown out into the street. His wife and children were standing outside the house. The Brahmin had taken a loan from a money lender. He could not repay the loan. One day, that lender accosted the Brahmin while he was walking and asked him to stop. The Brahmin stopped. With a charcoal, the lender drew a circle around the Brahmin and asked the Brahmin to not move out of the circle. The lender demanded that the Brahmin should declare when he would repay the loan. The Brahmin replied that he would repay in 2 fortnights. However, he could not keep up his word because he could not get the money to repay the loan. The lender had already told the Brahmin strictly that he would occupy the house after the time limit if the loan was not repaid. In this way, the lender was troubling the Brahmin. The Brahmin, his wife, and children were in a helpless circumstance. All the villagers were watching this peculiarity as if it was a fun event, but none of them dared to convince the lender to give some more time for the repayment. Sripada places devotees in critical situations, tests their devotion, and rescues them. Sri Dharmagupta was moved on seeing the miserable state of the Brahmin. He wanted to help, but he did not have any money at that time. I had no money. However, I ventured and said, "Sir, take pity on this helpless Brahmin and grant him an extension of time for 2 more fortnights. In the meantime, the Brahmin will come out of his difficulties on account of the mercy of Sripada Srivallabha. Calmly think a bit. I will guarantee the repayment of the loan by him." I spoke these words involuntarily. The lender spoke. "Okay, I believe you. I am giving an extension of time for 2 fortnights to repay the loan. But you two travelers should not leave from here until the loan is completely repaid. In case the debt is not redeemed, I will not only seize the house of this Brahmin, but will also take you both to the village bench for unnecessarily making me grant an extension of time. Then you both will be liable for the punishment imposed by the justice there." I was worried about the promise I made. It was improbable either for me or Sri Dharmagupta to repay the loan of the Brahmin before the deadline. I made this promise like a fool, without thinking about the possibility or propriety of it. I must blame myself for this sort of thoughtless promise. It is not proper to blame Sripada Srivallabha for such matters. Along with me, I also threw Sri Dharmagupta into a difficult situation. This would be another sin. This example is enough to illustrate how troubles will arise if there is no control over speech. Where is the end for the Leelas of the Lord? Only when such situations arise, either strong devotion will develop or the devotion will disappear. Sri Dharmagupta was unworried. He said, Shankarabhat, don't grieve over what happened. What happened, what is happening, and what will happen is all his Leela. The writing of Brahma is bound to happen. There were no provisions in the house of the Brahmin to eat a meal. He had no money. He and his family members were going to starve without meals anyway. Now, we too were added as their guest. By the grace of Sripada, we got shelter. We thought that was enough. I felt that Sripada Srivallabha is the sole refugee in times of hunger and total exhaustion. In times of troubles from lenders, when caught between the horns of a dilemma, not knowing what to do or what not to do, and in critical circumstances, we finished our baths and ablutions for the day. We started reciting the name of Sripada Srivallabha since there was no other way. Except for the recollection of his name in this situation, there was no oil, wicks, or other material that were needed for the worship of the Lord with lights in the house of that poor Brahmin. Whenever we chanted the incantation Sripadarajam Sharanam Prapadhye, all the inmates of the house were repeating it. The children and old ladies who were neighbors on the street also gathered there. They were also chanting the name of Sripada with devotion. In the meantime, some farmers also came to the house of the Brahmin. Word spread in the village that I stood as a guarantor for the repayment of the loan of the Brahmin and that I was a disciple of a great person and therefore I was prepared to redeem the debt of the Brahmin through my divine power. Information was also circulated that I would not have given such a strong guarantee if I did not have some divine powers, and also that I was a great astrologer. The farmers of the village were fond of betting. Some of them put bets that the Brahmin would repay the loan, while some others put bets that he could not repay. Oh, what a bad destiny! I thought to myself that from a comfortable position I brought upon myself needless distress. By making an impossible promise randomly, I was stuck into the crisis. I thought that I would be dragged before the village court if I could not repay the loan of the Brahmin. Sri Dharmagupta also, along with me, would land into trouble. In addition to this, some people also placed bets based on my hollow promise. At the very least, my ineffective promise had become a cause for the betting of gamblers. I believed that the only refugee was the divine auspicious feet of Sripada, the divine entertainer who rejoices every moment with his leelas. The words Satyam Vidhatum Nijabrutya Bhashitam, which sage Narada said with Mahavishnu, came to my memory. I felt that Lord Narayana would observe the words of his servants and that he would take responsibility for making them as truthful words. In the village, there lived a scholar with the name Sarabheswara Shastri. He was an expert in Mantra Shastra. With the help of some ghost, he was accurately telling about the past, present, and future. Some bidders approached Sarabheswara and submitted the matter. He sought the refuge of the ghost, and it said that the Brahmin would not repay the debt. With that information, the pace of the wagers increased. The farmers of the village who were gamblers started to bid hundreds of varahas. They were very enthusiastic in betting because this episode would determine who was great, Sarabheshwara Shastri or Shankara Bhatt. I thought to myself, Lord Sripada, you have placed me amidst the gamblers. You prepared me to be dragged to the village court. You wanted to subject that poor Brahmin to difficulties after giving hope to him. You are also putting into trouble Sri Dharmagupta, who is a genuine disciple. I am unable to comprehend the inner meaning of this divine play. I only have a nominal education and I do not possess any spiritual strength. I do not know great arts like astrology. I do not observe japa and tapa, yogic exercises, strict principles, and devotion. I intended to write the divine hagiography of Sripada out of curiosity, but I do not have any qualification needed for that. I prayed that it is His will as to how He would rescue and uplift me. It is a proverb that a stubborn person is stronger than a king. Courage, which was hitherto not in me, began to sprout in me. I firmly believed that whatever has to happen will happen, and that Sripada would save me through some means. Sarabheshwara Shastri had a sister. She also lived in the same village. One day she had a dream in the early hours of the day. The gist of the dream was that she had high fever, that her husband died, and that she became a widow. She inquired from her brother Sarabheshwara Shastri about the outcome of the dream. Sarabheshwara questioned the ghost worshipped by him about the matter. Then the ghost said that her husband, who was in another country, was attacked by robbers on his way home and that they killed him after robbing the money. On hearing this, Sarabheshwara Shastri's sister wept bitterly. In the meantime, some people who were betting on the outcome of the loan repayment came to the house of Sarabheshwara Shastri. They informed that a great person by the name of Shankara Bhatt was staying in that village at that time, that he was capable of doing and undoing things, that he was adoring a great deity called Sripada Srivallabha, and that a real explanation of the dream could be obtained from him. She had not heard of any other Pandit who was greater than her brother till then. She heard for the first time about a Pandit greater than her brother and wanted to submit her trouble to that great personage and obtain his blessings. She was brought to the house where we were staying. She prayed to me in a pathetic way, Brother, please save my Mangalya, life of her husband. Some akshatas which were given by Sripada to the farmer during his marriage at the Panchdeva Pahad were still with me. I had some sort of divine inspiration. It struck me that because the akshatas were given by Sripada himself, the mangalya of the lady would be protected if I gave those akshatas to her. I said to her, Mother, take these mantra akshatas. These are golden rice grains of turmeric. Preserve them in your puja room. Your husband will join you in a few days. This is true. This news was conveyed to Sarabheswara Shastri by the farmers who were betting on the outcome of the loan repayment. He became enraged. His sister announced that if her husband returned alive to her house, she would not only repay the loan amount of the poor Brahmin, but also accept Shankara Bhatt as her preceptor and would worship Sripada Srivallabha. 3 days passed. In these 3 days, farmers were bringing food to the house of the poor Brahmin where I was residing. They laid wagers in my favor. If I succeeded, they would also win and gain a lot of money in that wager. After 3 days, on the fourth day, the brother-in-law of Sarabheswara Shastri returned safely from the distant lands. The joy of Sarabheswara sisters knew no bounds. She thought that on account of the mantrakshatas given by me, her Saubhagya was retained. When some robbers were about to kill her husband during his journey, a Muslim wrestler killed the robbers and rescued her husband. Oh, the greatness of Sripada is boundless. The arrogance of Sarabheshwara Shastri was destroyed. As my prophecy came true, Sarabheshwara Shastri repaid the loan of the poor Brahmin where we were staying. Sarabheshwara Shastri requested Sri Dharmagupta and me to accept hospitality in their house. We agreed. Sarabheshwara remarked, Sir, I worship Dhumravati Devi, one of the Dashamahavidyas. According to the Tantra books, she is actually Ugratara. If she is happy, she will destroy all diseases and sorrows. If she is angry, she will destroy all comforts and pleasures. When surrendered to her, all calamities will be destroyed and all riches will be gained. If she is angered, hunger and thirst, quarrels and all kinds of poverty will result. I obtained the grace of that great mother. The great mother wards off all ill effects of exorcism and deadly exercises of killing. Her devoted worship is unavoidable for all people suffering from witchcraft and who want protection. Initially, I worked for the good of the people without any greed for money. I became avaricious of money and demanded much money from those suffering from the afflictions of Uchatana, driving away, and Marana, causing death exercises. This was not acceptable to the Great Mother. In the meantime, I got a connection in the world of the vital force with a very strong spirit of a dead person. With the assistance of that spirit of the dead person, I derived an unusual power of telling about the past, the present, and the future. These means were ultimately turned those who worship them into miserable ones. One should not worship them. In case they are worshipped, the money earned through those powers should be utilized for the use of the public and it should be donated to the distressed people who are in want of money. By doing that, the spirit of the dead one will constantly be in our control. If it is not done like that and money is earned selfishly, then those spirits will give some wrong prediction and will subject the worshipper to shame and turn him into a pauper. Not only that, but sometimes even death may take place. Due to selfishness, the mass of merit in us will be depleted. Then the spirit of the dead person will expose us to ashtakashtas, 8 varieties of difficulties. I was unwise, not being judicious of the money being earned and lived as a selfish person. Therefore, the spirit of the dead escaped from my control. It gave a wrong prophecy and brought embarrassment to me. I faced ignominy. From today, you are my Guru. Please accept me as your disciple. I said, Sir, there is no other Guru for this world or creation except Sripada Srivallabha. If I arrogate myself as a Guru, then I will have to experience more insults than what you experienced thus far. When we were coming from Kurungadda, Sripada told briefly about the Dashamahavidyas. He added that remaining details will be taught at the appropriate time and up to the appropriate extent. I learned from you about Kali and Dhumravati of the Dashamahavidyas. Sir, kindly do not take me as your guru. I was stuck here under some peculiar circumstances. Now I came out of those circumstances. Sripada is an adept in creating difficult problems. He is very dexterous in pulling his devotees out from such difficult problems. Constant remembrance of the name of Sripada is the only means to achieve in this world and in the other worlds. Sripada Rajam Sharanam Prapadhye.